Calisthenics. Which progression model is better, straight sets or circuits? In today's video, I'll compare these two training styles and discuss what they do best in terms of three different categories: strength and power, conditioning, and muscle. With a better understanding of each method, we can adjust our training to fit our own individual needs and make certain we're working towards goals we actually care about. Before going into specifics, let me first give a brief summary of each. Straight sets can be thought of as the normal way to track your progress. You pick an exercise, do as many reps as you can in a set, and next time you do the exercise, try to do more reps in that set. This is the basic setup used by 99% of people 99% of the time. In an upper body calisthenics workout, you might do something like 3 sets of pull-ups, 3 sets of dips, 3 sets of inverted rows, 3 sets of pike push-ups, and 3 sets of hanging leg raises, resting 2 to 3 minutes between sets. This setup is simple, straightforward, and easy to track. Circuits, as I'm describing them today, take a slightly different approach. Rather than reps, circuits track progress with time. Whereas before, with straight sets, our main goal was to do more reps in each set, with a circuit, the total number of reps will remain the same every workout, and our goal will be to complete those reps faster. A great example is the basic 10 down circuit. Using the same exercises from the straight sets example, a 10 down would go as follows: 10 pull-ups, 10 dips, 10 inverted rows, 10 pike push-ups, 10 hanging leg raises, then 9 of each, then 8 of each, all the way down to 1 rep of each. You track how long it takes you to complete the circuit, and next workout you try to beat your time. With circuits, there are no planned rest times. You just keep going and only stop as needed along the way. This setup does take a bit more thought, but once you get going, it can be just as effective and easy to track as straight sets are. Introduction out of the way, let's compare the two styles, starting with strength and power. In theory, any variation of any exercise can be used with either setup, but in practice, things aren't quite so simple. With straight sets, you will eventually need to move on to more difficult variations of the basic exercises. Eventually, you'll be able to do so many pike push-ups, for example, that you'll either need to add weight or move on to a more difficult variation like handstand push-ups. Or you can also use intensity techniques, as discussed in a recent video. With circuits, however, most of the time, moving on to more advanced variations can get messy quick. Take push-ups, for example. Basic push-ups are straightforward. You either do the rep or you don't. Pseudo-planche push-ups, on the other hand, take some thought. If you're trying to stay consistent, you'll need to make sure your hands are in the exact same position on every rep, and you'll need to actively work on keeping your weight shifted forward. Not a problem when you're doing straight sets, but when your goal is speed and the cardiovascular demand is high, it can be tough to hold yourself accountable. It would also be unrealistic to add or take away weight for each exercise during a circuit. It would take too much time. You could of course wear a weight vest for the entire circuit, but typically it works best to just stick with the basic body weight exercises. These ideas in mind, pure raw strength is best developed with straight sets because they allow you more freedom to work with higher intensities. You could also say raw power is best developed with straight sets because you'll have more opportunity for powerful reps. It's widely accepted that power is best developed when you're fresh and nothing is holding you back from giving your all to every rep. It's also said if you want to be fast, you need to move fast. Straight sets allow you to begin every set fresh and let you perform at least the first few reps of every set very explosively. This isn't the end of the discussion though. While straight sets work better for max strength, circuits give you strength endurance. With circuit training, you might not be moving quite as fast, and the exercises you do will be relatively easier than pure strength stuff, but you're forced to keep pushing for much longer. Strength endurance is often overlooked in structured exercise programs, but is arguably more useful in everyday situations outside the gym. It's one thing to lift a very heavy weight a few times, but another thing entirely to lift a moderately heavy weight many times. Most life situations will rely on the second ability, strength endurance. Very few training methods even come close to calisthenic circuits for building this attribute to an elite level. Moving on to conditioning, calisthenics in general has a very positive effect here. Most of the fundamental calisthenics exercises are compound movements. They work a lot of muscle at once. This requires a higher level of conditioning when compared to other forms of training like isolation-focused machine work, for example. This means whichever training style you choose to focus on, straight sets or circuits, your base level of conditioning will already be relatively more advanced than what you might get with some other things. That said, however, if we stay objective, there's really only so much cardiovascular strength you need to complete straight sets. Once you pass a certain level, you should be reaching the end of a set because your muscles worked to their limit, not because you were out of breath. Calisthenic circuits, on the other hand, seem to work in the opposite direction. While the cardiovascular demand of a straight set approach levels out and becomes insignificant fairly quickly, which leaves you with a training style dependent entirely upon the strength of the prime mover muscles themselves, circuit training works in reverse. When you first begin circuit training, you'll most likely feel as though your muscles reach momentary failure long before cardio becomes a factor at all. If you stick with it though, you'll find the muscles adapt fairly quickly and develop enough strength endurance to handle a lot more work in a lot less time. This is when your conditioning starts to matter, and this is what I meant when I said circuits seem to work in the opposite way. Rather than becoming a non-issue early on, with circuits, the stronger your muscles get, the more cardiovascular strength you need to keep up with the quicker pace. Said plainly, with straight sets, you reach a point where cardio no longer matters. With circuits, you reach a point where it starts. In this way, calisthenic circuits let you develop elite strength endurance and elite conditioning alongside each other at the same time. If we take a step back and examine what strength endurance actually is, it's a very unique and seemingly contradictory attribute. I'm sure most of you out there have done some type of max strength work, as well as some kind of long-distance cardio work, but looking at both separately, they don't seem to fit together. With max strength, and for lifters that usually means a 1-rep max effort attempt, you give everything you have in one short burst. Imagine you're going for a new squat record. You finally put 3 plates on either side of the bar and you're ready. You might spend a few minutes amping yourself up, you wait for that exact moment in the most aggressive song you know, take a deep breath and brace, and hold that breath. You go down to the bottom of the rep and you feel that fight instinct take over as your body realizes it's gonna need to stand back up or be crushed. You push with everything you have, and slowly but surely you complete the rep. The entire thing from unrack to re-rack takes 10 seconds and you're spent. Now look at something like long distance cross country running. You never need to push quite as hard at any one moment, or tense up, or hold your breath, or tap as deeply into that aggressive side, but the effort is just as intense as it was with the max effort lift. The difference here is, rather than one burst, the difficulty comes in continuing on, pushing through exhaustion and the burning in your lungs and in your legs. You don't know how you're doing it, and you don't know how you'll ever make it to the end, but you drive yourself forward one step at a time, and eventually you make it. A real test of strength endurance will leave you wishing you had it so easy. A 1-rep max squat or a 5-mile run will feel like child's play in comparison. A calisthenic circuit takes each of these things and amplifies them. There is a constant and never-ending underlying feeling of exhaustion like you'd get when running, but rather than another step, it's another difficult strength exercise you need to get through. A set of 6 pull-ups isn't much on its own, but when you've already hit that point of, am I gonna make it, 6 pull-ups can feel impossible. It takes every bit of strength you have to do 1 rep, then you somehow find the will to do another, and so on, for what usually amounts to hundreds of reps. This is the true power of calisthenic circuits. If you commit to them and make yourself do better every workout, you'll build an unrelenting willpower that's tough as stone. Everything else you do in the gym, and most things you do outside of it, will feel easy by contrast. Finally, let's discuss muscle. Which training style, circuits, or straight sets gets you swole faster? What we have here is a case of practical application not necessarily living up to the theory. On paper, most would be inclined to say the straight set approach builds more muscle. It's easy to track, you eventually do more reps with more weight, and of course, most importantly, it's the method most people use and what most people recommend. If we use progressive overload as a scale for gauging progress, even knowing decreasing time is in fact a form of progressive overload, more reps with more weight still seems like the better choice. Well, I'll be straight with you from the start. When pure muscle building is the goal, both methods are equal. The exact form of progressive overload you choose to use doesn't actually matter. Be it time or weight or reps, they all work. What matters is that you do give it your all and you do make progress of some kind. That out of the way, because circuit training as a method for adding muscle is less common and can be more difficult to understand, and because I know a lot of you still don't believe it, let me make a case for why circuits could actually be the better choice for building muscle. Maybe you've heard the term effective reps. Science and reality don't always see eye to eye, but one thing they both agree on is, if you want to build muscle in the most efficient way possible, you should train all the way or close to failure. If you watch any footage of old school bodybuilders, you'll often hear them say something like, "The set doesn't start until the muscles are already burning." What they're describing is effective reps. In a set of 10 reps to failure, the first 5 or 6 are much less important for building muscle than the last 3 or 4 reps are. Those last 3 or 4, when things start to get difficult, are the effective reps. Let's say you're using the straight set approach with the 5 exercise workout I went over earlier, 3 sets each of pull-ups, dips, inverted rows, pike push-ups, and hanging leg raises. If we focus in on the pull-ups, and if we're being generous, we can say maybe each set yields 5 effective reps. With 3 sets, that's 15 real muscle building reps total for the workout. Now compare that to the 10 down example. The first set of 10 yields maybe 1 or 2 effective reps. The next set of 9 again gets you 1 or 2. But as you push forward, you reach a point where every single rep becomes an effective rep. If you really push with everything you have, by the time you get to sets 7 or 6, it will be pure willpower that gets you through. Even if we severely undervalue the difficulty of these reps and say you get only 2 effective reps per set, that's still at least 4 more than you'd get with straight sets. Most likely though, you'd be doubling that number. Now, I realize these examples could skew things in favor of the circuits because a 10 down with pull-ups is 55 reps total, and 3 straight sets probably won't add up to that much volume. But as I said before, this is one of the basic differences between the two styles. Straight sets work best at a higher base level of intensity, meaning less total volume but with more difficult exercises, whereas circuits work best with lower levels of intensity. More volume, but with less difficult exercises. That's just how they work, so if we think in terms of effective reps, the circuits win. We should also consider, when talking about muscle gain, we need to think long term. It's a slow process and one workout isn't enough. If we really want to judge a training method, we need to look at how it fits into the context of a full program, rather than just looking at what it does on a single given day. If our only focus is muscle gain, then it would make sense the method that adds less total fatigue, both physically and mentally, would be the better choice, because it leaves us with more resources for other training sessions. Initially, while you're still adapting, the circuit training will probably be the more fatiguing option, but as you get better, in the long term, it becomes far less fatiguing than the straight set approach. In a way, circuits almost become rejuvenating. Decreasing time is a reliable way to increase intensity and induce progressive overload, just as adding reps or weight or moving on to more difficult exercise variations are reliable methods for doing the same. But even matching intensity levels, a standard set of 10 pull-ups will always be less fatiguing than a set of 10 with 25 pounds added to the body. This is the real secret to building muscle with calisthenics circuits. The further you progress, the better the stimulus to fatigue ratio gets. With straight sets, the opposite is true. Eventually, you will need to increase the difficulty of your circuits in some way, be it through adding volume or weight or whatever, but over time, the circuits always come out ahead in this category. Don't forget, of course, that these examples are just me trying to convince you that circuit training is effective for building muscle in general, and the reality is either approach will lead to increased muscle mass over time. So here we are, circuits versus straight sets. Which is better? Well, if we remain objective and don't let our own preferences interfere with the truth, we'll see there's no right answer to that question. Better for what? As with most ideas related to training, both will work, and it all comes down to what you prefer. Personally, I like circuits more, but I've had success with both. So, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.